Kia ora whanau, here's another Kings of War tournament and tactics report, this time from Oamaru in New Zealand, using the free Dwarfs versus Abyssals, Goblins, Men, Ogres and Rhordia in a two-day tournament. So Mantic's CEO, the company that makes Kings of War, Ronnie, he's an ex-Dwarf player from GW, this was an ex-GW director. And one of the common criticisms of Dwarfs in Warhammer was always that they were a bit boring to play with and against. Their usual tactic was to just be a gun line sitting in a corner, which got old pretty quickly for both players and opponents. So in Kings of War, there's a great variety of units and armies and tactics and background for Dwarves, which makes them considerably more interesting from the point of view of play and so on. And so the free dwarves, their background is that their dwarves have lost their underground holds and are forced to live above ground, and they've become expert in scouting and having ranges and ambushes and that sort of thing. Free dwarves don't have the armor or hitting power or the war engines that the Imperial dwarves do, for example, but they make up for it, in theory, with their scouting and so on. So I was keen to try that out, and also take some units that are less commonly seen in the free dwarf list. In particular, these spear levy here, you notice 4 trips of spear levy, which are pretty maligned amongst dwarf players, and you don't commonly see them. And I guess I was wanting to give them a run and see how they do. There's also 4 ranger units, 2 troops, 2 regiments, one of them the hand-picked rangers. There's also the new formation from Clash of Kings 22, which is Eric's Mallets, so that's a Dwarf Lord, Eric the Bold, and 3 regiments of shield breakers who all have Pathfinder, enabling to move through difficult terrain easily, and Wild Charge 1, charge an extra inch, and Scout, so that's their claim to fame. Then there's 3 other characters here. We've got Stone Priest, who will be doing far too much. Here's Alchemist's Curse to melt heavily armoured opponents, Veil of Shadows to protect from archery, and Scorched Earth to mess up, for example, cavalry charges to make them hindered. So you can cast one of them a spell, one of them a turn, so you have to choose if there's multiple good things to do. Quite expensive, but he kind of covers for a number of gaps, hopefully. Hunius the Hunter, a ranger hero, named character with a crossbow which can do extra damage, and Bannock Colearm, who's a flame priest who can also cast Bane Chant. So it's a reasonably large army with 15 units, 21 unit strength. Its average defense is 4, though Eric is defense 6, one of the few armies which can get defense 6 characters and units for that matter, in the Imperial Dwarves at least, is Dwarves. Here we've only got a defense 6 Lord and a couple of characters, Bannock and the Free Dwarf Stone Priest, defense 5, otherwise it's all defense 4. A lot of shooting, so that's all the rangers shooting. And here is the army, which was finished just a couple of days before the tournament. And here's the Free Dwarf Spear Levy, the front rank, which they're actually Oathmark figures, which are a bit more slender than Mantic figures, but given they're the younger, more inexperienced dwarves, I figured they'd be okay. And the shield breakers, Eric's Mallets behind. They also have Brutal as a special ability, I forgot about that. And then the rangers, the ones with the gold hats there being the hand-picked Hunius' rangers. And there we have Hunius, or actually perhaps Hunietta, given that's the female dwarf ranger captain from Vanguard. there's the Flame Priest, Bannock, Stone Priest, which is actually a Reaper figure, and Eric, all armoured up. Strengths and weaknesses of the Free Dwarfs here. So firstly, the entire army scouts, so it can start up to halfway across the table pretty much, which is quite an advantage. It all has Pathfinder, except the Stone Priest, which means they can move and fight in difficult terrain without penalty. There's a fair bit of shooting from the Rangers, hitting on 4s. And plus there's the Fireball and the Alchemist Curse from the Stone Priest, which also ranged attacks. And I've also got down here with a question mark the Phalanx on the Spear Levy. So I mean that's good against flyers and cavalry, which could be quite useful, especially when we come to the weaknesses, which is number 1, the speed. So they're dwarfs, so they're slow. So speed 4 for most of the units, speed 5 for the Rangers, which means the enemy will be charging them most of the time. And it's you need to think in advance about objectives, and you're not going to be able to react in a hurry. It's also, they also have quite low defense. It's mostly 4, the Lord 6. So they're not like Imperial Dwarves, which have, you know, defense 6 and 5 units, a lot of them. And the damage they can put out, I mean, all the shooting is, it's got piercing 0, so it's no extra bonus to penetrate armor. The shield breakers have crush 1, but that's it really. So some of the characters have some options to do a bit more damage, but that's limited. So just a couple more thoughts on the Spear Levy. I, like many dwarf players, just looking at them on paper, they don't look that great, even against things they should be good against, like cavalry, especially heavy cavalry. You'd think, you know, cavalry is just going to run over them and around. But I decided to check that, stuck them in the Math Hammer app on Tactical War Games, and was kind of surprised that the odds are basically like if a heavy cavalry unit charges into them, roll a d6. On a 6, the heavy cavalry routs them straight away. 4 to 5, they waver the Spear Levy, and 1 to 3, the Spear Levy holds and fights back. Slightly worse than that, but that's roughly what it is, which is not so bad actually. I mean that's usable, and so I was a bit surprised there, and perhaps also part of the problem is being used to Warhammer, where spears and pikes were actually pretty terrible. They didn't really do much, whereas in King's War, phalanx ability is far more like it was historically, good against cavalry, and also in King's War against flyers. So anyway, I'll be interested to see how they and the rest of the dwarves do against the terrors of the south. Let us proceed. So the first game of the tournament was Ken, and I actually challenged Ken to a grudge match, just on the basis that I've been in 2 tournaments and haven't got to play him yet, which isn't really a grudge. A grudge is supposed to be someone who's beaten you previously or something. But anyway, I wanted to play Ken's Abyssals, so off we went. And as you can see, there is, what is there here? So Abyssal Guards, Lower Abyssals, Succubi, and Abyssal Horsemen. So they're kind of the smaller demons. But then there is Acronius, the Manifestation of Baal, and an Archfiend of the Abyss, big monsters, and Matsubusu, who is a assassin character basically. And Ken's army is a mix of figures. These are the Mantic Abyssal Guard units, I think, but he's also got a range of other manufacturers in there. So here is the deployment, and I've also done my first scout move. So the Rangers have moved up while still being in cover, so that they're in crossbow range of the enemy for the first turn, and the spear levy and the shield breakers are also moving up, and the intention, I guess, over here is to perhaps move around the flank around this tower, and there's shield breakers in reserve here. Another part of the plan here is I've thrown forth this spear levy unit, so that's in tempting charge range of what's this? The manifestation of Baal, one of the big flying monsters. And the hope is that Ken might charge it, and then I'll jump on it with everything and kill it. And remembering the spear levies do have a bit of a bonus against flyers, so they might even be able to hold for a turn. So the Abyssals fall into my trap, and here comes the manifestation of Baal charging the spear levy. And I immediately start having regrets, thinking perhaps that isn't actually the best idea. Amongst other things, this manifestation of Baal has an ability called, what is it? I don't know. It's called, but it curses the units around it once per game. So he curses Bannock and these two arch units, and so they're all disordered, which means they can't shoot, and Bannock can't use its spells. So that's unfortunate. It only lasts a round, but still, there were some useful things I would have otherwise done. The spear levy do their job though, and they do actually hold for a round. And I charge with 4 units, 2 in the flank, and manage to take out the manifestation of Baal, like so. So that was those units charge it in the front, and those 2 hit the flank, and they've killed it, and they've turned to face. Over here, there's all these units starting to come around this way, so actually these units start heading in this way. And the Abyssals, they reach combat and charge in, so the Succubi kill the spear levy off. The shield breakers here are routed by these Abyssal horsemen, and Succubi routes this other unit of rangers. So that's 3 units of dwarves lost. In response though, I do concentrate all the fire on the Cronius, which has an ability Cloak of Death, which means it damages things near it every turn, and also it can heal things, so I want that gone. So the shooting takes that out, and take out that Succubi regiment. These spear levy chuck themselves into this huge horde just to hold it up for a turn. Some damage is done over here, I think, with a little bit of shooting. So the Abyssals turn, and they charge in again, and so the Abyssal Guard are into my elite rangers here. I think the Succubi aren't charging because they got wavered, which is lucky. The Archfiend comes across here and kills Bannock off. And I lose these 2 spear levy die to the demons. And with this Archfiend, this was nearly absolute disaster because it overran 5 inches. If it had gone 1 more inch, if you'd rolled a 6, it would have been into the flank and taken out that range unit too. But thankfully that did not happen. So my turn, and these 2 range units get stuck into these Abyssals here, but lots of the demons regenerate, so it's actually really tough going to try and take them out. Though Hernius or Hernietta there actually managed to shoot and knocks off the wounded Abyssals Succubi unit there, so that disappears, that's good. These 2 shield breakers take out the Abyssal horsemen. And we just get out of the way of the Archfiend and concentrate a lot of fire on it. Should also mention, way over here in the corner, that's Matsubusu and the Dwarf Lord going at it, and they've been doing that every turn of the game since turn 1 pretty much, or turn 2. Yeah, so they're still fighting. And there's the end of my turn. Yes, my rangers have wavered from those demons. And just here's another look at this combat. So we've got dwarves hitting these in the side, but they're just really, and rangers aren't that bad. It's just these demons are quite tough for my dwarves to deal with. So here's this combat with Eric and Matsubusu. So Matsubusu is a character assassin. You can see I've done, I think, 5 wounds to her. And Eric's taken 8. So, I mean, she would have just killed any of my characters instantly in one turn, I think, except Eric, because Eric's defense 6. And if you're going to fight a horrible demon like this, you need a good solid dwarf. But nonetheless, this demon is designed to kill characters. So unfortunately, Eric falls. In the next turn, I managed to shoot down the Archfiend. This combat is still going on, but we eventually win against them. And meanwhile, I'm trying to take on this abyssal horde of lesser demons, but they are regenerating more quickly than I can kill them, unfortunately. There we go. So, this is basically how the game ends up. I have 2 units of rangers and 2 characters. Matsubusu's come over here and taken out, together with the Horde, one of the shield breaker units, and then I lose my last shield breaker unit. So the scenario was invade, so neither of us have any units on the enemy side of the table at the end of the game. So it's a draw, so it just comes down to kill points, and I've killed slightly more than the Abyssals have. So it's 14 to 13, but very close bloody game, and yeah. So tactical lessons from this game, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'm glad Matsubusu concentrated as long as she did on the Dwarf Lord. I think she would have been better to fly around and pick off the other characters, probably. Would have done that more quickly. But yeah, no, the Dwarves held out surprisingly well, just quite a few units, and it just took the demons quite a time to get through them. I did also have some luck, wavered the Archfiend with a double 6 near the start of the game, which slowed it down for a round. And the other thing that I noticed was quite effective was so the demons might bust through something, but then there's more dwarves to either come and hit them in the face with a hammer, or put a volley of crossbow bolts into them. So they gradually get worn down just by the numbers of dwarves, which was quite satisfying. Game 2 versus Josh's Goblins. And this was quite a small goblin army, really, but it did have 2 hordes of trolls, 2 lots of minces, some war engines, Groany Snark, that flying nasty goblin hero. So yeah, so not a big army, but a more elite one. And here's the table. And I think Josh might have won the choice of sides. But in any case, it's dominate, so which is to have as many units as you can in the 12-inch central zone at the end of the game. And there's these 2 woods and some rough terrain there, which I'm hoping I'll be able to use to fight goblins in, given that's the terrain I'm good at and the goblins are not. So with my first scout move before the game begins, my dwarves race up to these positions across the hill line here and moving up into these woods. And they are in charge range of Megwans, the cavalry unit there. But I figure if I get first turn, I'll be able to unleash a bunch of fire from my crossbow units into his units. And if he does charge in there, at least it'll be in a wood. So let's see what happens. So the goblins charge in and take out my ranger troop, and I flank them and waver them in return. And combat and grind starts over here on the side. And actually, this is not actually a wonderful situation that's developing over here. I've got a levied spear horde guarding the flank. I've got the two goblin heroes coming around this flank. And over here, I'm a bit stuck trying to work out what to do with these troll hordes. So I decide to sacrifice one of the spear levy, poor spear levy, just to try and suck forward the trolls, and also the dwarf lord, who might have to take on a troll horde by himself. So here's a view on the right, and over here on the left. And the trolls do indeed come forward, and they charge into the flank of the spear levy there and rout them. And the dwarf lords, who has a reasonable sort of chance of dying to a troll horde, he stands, fortunately, as I wanted him to. Over here, though, the mincers are coming in, taking out a spear levy, hitting it in the flank, and coming in here and whacking into my shield breakers, I think. And a spear levy fighting a goblin horde there as well. Yeah, ouch. So that's the end of that goblin turn, and as you can see, I've lost spear levy, and more spear levy, and the shield breakers got hit by the mincers and took tons of damage. So yes. However, this is also kind of where I want these trolls to be now. So here we've got some options. Got a flank charge into the side of those trolls, flank charge into the side of those trolls there, and just the ability to hit them. So the plan is to just hope we do enough damage to win against these trolls. And over here, well, it's kind of falling to pieces, but hopefully I can win on this side. And on the left flank, it does go well. Get a bit lucky and take out both troll hordes. And the Stone Priest uses his Melt spell and Alchemist Curse and wavers the Wingit. And these rangers are dealing with this goblin unit. So we've come through and yeah, done a lot of damage to the left flank here and won it really. And another turn or two, and so we're being cleaned up on the right here by the mincers, and there's the troll bruiser there as well. That's Grony Snark and the wizard casting Host Shadow Beast on him to give him extra attacks, but he keeps bouncing off Bannock there, which is fortunate. And so this is a lot of goblin heroes, Grony Snark with backed up by the goblin whiz, and just bouncing off Bannock's helmet there, often wavering him but not able to finish him off, fortunately. And eventually the goblin gets sick of not being able to kill this dwarf and races away to fight someone else. Meanwhile, though, the goblin mincers are just grinding through my dwarf units, with the troll either looking on or helping sometimes. And here's the mincers grinding through a shield breaker unit, sadly. And I have done a fair bit of damage to these mincers by this time, and I throw in some shield breakers to finish them off, and it's looking like it's going really well for the dwarves. But then I roll a double one, and unfortunately they live and grind back, and there goes another unit. Over here, given both armies are so thin on the ground, it's coming down to whoever can actually keep a unit which has unit strength alive. So there's this unit of rangers, there's this unit of rangers here, there's this troll. So I just concentrate all the fire from Henrietta, that ranger troop, and the stone priest, and just managed to kill the troll. These rangers couldn't shoot because they're being beaten up by the troll and were wavered. So this is how it ends up, with just the goblin wizard left trying to take out my ranger regiment here, but failing to do so, and my dwarves close in for the kill, and they don't do it quite, but still it is a victory to the dwarves over the goblins. So with the kind of disaster on the right flank, I was not feeling too confident at the start of the game, but it came right in the end, and I think something that helped here was it was probably not a bad matchup for my dwarves, because the goblins had quite a few toys and not quite enough of basic goblin units to just get in my way and slow things down while toys could do their work. Was my feeling here. Though the mincers were certainly nasty, the war engines, the Morbuck launchers, the stone thrower, stick thrower, the wing it, they really didn't do much. Game 3, and this was versus Lindsay's Kingdoms of Men. So Lindsay was is a new player. He had only played 2 games before this tournament, so this was his game number 5 of Kings of War. And someone had made him the army list, who also didn't know much about Kings of War, I think. But nonetheless, it's not a terrible army. There's 1 or 2 weird things, like hand sanguinary scripture was something we noticed on the army standard bearer. He's only got 1 attack, so it's not really the most awesome use of that thing. And we swapped over an item there to give him the Pipes of Terror because he had something which the assassin already had. But anyway, it's quite a large army, lots of hordes of infantry, shield wall, polearms, foot guards, a mob of militia, just a regiment, a bowman horde, a crossbow horde, 2 regiments of knights, regiment of sergeants, 3 heroes, and a cannon. So a lot of unit strength, you can see there, 29, 57 shots, plus quite a bit of hand-to-hand combat ability too. And here's the setup, and my dwarves have done their first scout move. And the scenario, we were playing control because we read it wrong. It was supposed to be smoke and mirrors, but we'd got underway, so control it was. And you'll notice at the back there, Lindsay has some, that's just his unit stats so he can remember them. And so what am I doing? I'm racing up, and I'm using my scout moves, hoping I get first turn so I can, or even second turn, doesn't really matter, but I saw that he had his knights behind this wood. No doubt imagining he would race through it and then be into me, but with my scout move I can kind of move up and trap his knights in the wood before they can get out, is the plan. Which is not a good place for knights to be. So in the center here we have, I think there was a bow and a cannon, some of the infantry, close combat infantry. I think pole arms and shield wall or something. There's bowmen. So quite a lot of firepower. Mind you, so I've got quite a lot of firepower too, and mine's in cover. So the men come forward here. You see the knights coming through the woods. And I take a fair bit of damage from the shooting, but on the other hand, I'm in cover with my shooting, so that is pretty effective against his units. And yeah, so this big unit takes all this shooting and is wavered. I just charge straight into this first infantry unit. My spears and the Eric, the Dwarf Lord, race up to trap these knights in the forest, and we otherwise just press forward. So all these 3 dwarf units charging in, I think they do about 12 damage there. The Stone Priest does a bit of melting on the knights and does 5 damage to them, gets lucky. And then the human turn. There's another view of the same sort of thing. Yes, so all these archers with the light crossbows against, there must be the pole arms, I think, so they're taking a lot of damage from that. And right over on the right flank, it's a battle between my spear levy and Bannock versus the assassin and the mounted scouts. So this is something that the spear levy can actually handle, except combined with the assassin, the knights, the mounted scouts plus the assassin does actually take out the spear levy. And in the center, the spear levy charge into the knights. No, other way around. They're charged by the knights, and so is the Dwarf Lord. But the knights, because they're coming through the woods, they don't get their thunderous charge, and they don't get it anyway because they're charging into spear here. But they don't get it against my Dwarf Lord. So it'll be tough going for those knights. And just showing the shooting power of this Kingdoms of Men army. This shield break unit is taken out by bows and the cannon, and the other shield break unit is also taken out by this big horde of bows. So some pretty nasty shooting coming the way of the dwarves. And end of the Kingdoms of Men turn. So this horde has taken out the spear levy. I've lost the other spear levy there, and so it's just Bannock left. And I take out the first lot of knights, and I'd like to say it was a spear levy who did that, but it wasn't. It was the Stone Priest using his alchemist's curse to melt them. So and then he's run down by the mounted hero, and those dwarf spear levy are run down by the standard bearer, who only has 1 attack, but that's enough to take out those spear levy. The Dwarf Lord, though, is doing very well fighting back against these knights who are still stuck in the wood, you can see there, so they're really struggling to get through his armour. They don't have any crushing strength, so they need 6s to damage, and they're not doing that. I mean, they should do it, but they're not going very well. Meanwhile, it's down to the battle between the last couple units of infantry here, and the dwarves come out on top. And just through sheer attrition with the archers on both sides just pounding away at each other, and kind of being fought to a standstill in the middle here, and being finished off by archers, eventually the attrition goes in the favour of the rangers. So as you can see, there's only a couple of heroes left for the humans plus their cannon, and Bannock has managed to somehow fight off the assassin and the scouts. His fireball helped there, and he's coming around the back. So in the control scenario, that is what? That's 1, 2, 3, 4 sectors to me, and the cannon doesn't count in either of those heroes, any of the heroes. So that is a win for the Dwarfs, so 2 wins and a draw for the first day. Nonetheless, of course, I mean, obviously Lindsay is still doing pretty damn well here against, given it's only his 5th game of Kings of War, but you know, he used some pretty standard historical tactics with his men as far as you could see, and they didn't work too badly. It was just a bit of bad luck here and there, and I think a key thing was the problem too of getting his knights stuck in the wood, which worked in my favour fortunately. So day 2, and the first game was Ogres against Richard, and Richard was an even newer player than Lindsay. His first game was game number 1 of this tournament, and Richard was borrowing Craig the organiser's Ogre army for this tournament, though he's planning on building his own, of course. So this army had a fair bit of shooting too. The shooters and the boomers, a couple of warrior regiments, 2 siegebreaker units, boomer chariots, so they're the ones which give stealthy to nearby units, minus 1 to hit with shooting. A mammoth, the big deal mammoth in fact, a berserker bully hero, and 2 warlocks, one of them an omega warlock. So here's the setup. We have the shield breakers, the boomer chariots, regiment of warriors, and there's the big deal over there. And here's the boomers and shooters, another warrior regiment, and berserker bully. And I waste no time. Here's the scout move, rushing across the table with this as fast as I can, because I want to overwhelm these weaker shooting units and get into the sector and maybe attack the flank of these units here. Meanwhile, all the shooting will do what it can, but shield breakers, they're armor 6 on the front, so that'll be pretty tough, and especially because they've got the booming chariots there. I've got my own stone priest ready to cast Veil of Shadows, so the shooting here will be hindered as well. So there we go, there's my rangers ready to unleash volleys of bolts into the opponents over there. And here's the attack coming across here. And I got first turn, so just raced up. There's a little marker showing the Stone Priest has cast Veil of Shadows over all the units within 6, which is all this lot. So I lose the first spear lever unit to shooting anyway. There's a lot of shooting coming out of there, but I'm just trying to close this as quickly as possible. And these dwarves are racing up, just making sure they're not in a position to get flanked by any ogre unit. Our shooting does take out the warrior regiment, but does very little otherwise at this stage. Richard here, he advanced these ogre units a bit slowly perhaps, but I think he was thinking about the possibility of swinging around and attacking the flank of my dwarves as they came in there. So here's my dwarves about to take some charges on the right flank. So let's see how that goes. And this was a bit interesting. The berserker bully charged my dwarf lord, and I thought, he's a dwarf lord, fine, bring it on. But the berserker bully does 5 damage and kills my dwarf lord straight out. So that was a bit of a surprise. And then, of course, because it's character, he gets an overrun, goes into the shield, break units, but fortunately only does a couple of damage. But anyway, there's the damage from all these units thumping into mine. So yeah, ogres, even the shooting ones, like these boomers, can still do a fair bit of damage. So this is the situation just before my turn. And the shield breakers have turned around, ready to threaten the flank. That does mean they've exposed their weaker side armor, which is defense 5 rather than 6, to all my archery, so I intend to take full advantage of that. So here's my moves, just counter-charging right down the line here, and Bannock runs in, jumps over the wall, and just charges into the shooters, and that's just to interrupt their shooting for a round. So heroic stuff. And we unleash fire and do 12 damage to the shield breakers on the side and waver them, thank goodness. And take out the boomers with the 2 shield breaker units, and also managed to kill the bully, so that's pretty good. And the ogre turn on the right. The shield breaker unit is wavered by lightning bolt from the Mac Rock there, and the shooters do 7 damage and waver Bannock. The regiment of ogres kills the spear levy, and on this side the first 2 ranger regiments are taken out by siege breakers and the big deal, but the spear levy holds. My turn, I now have the advantage over here, so my dwarves charge in and finish off the shooters with flank charge, and also the warrior regiment with shield breakers and spear levy, and the stone priest manages, together with Hernius, manages to finish off the siege breakers too, with the alchemist curse and his crossbow. Meanwhile, down here, I do flank these boomer chariots and kill them, but I realise I will not be able to resist these units coming through with these units, so the ranger troop, given it's the control scenario, decides to leave to grab this sector over here. And yep, it's the end of the turn. You can see the shooters are gone, boomer chariot's gone. So Mac Rock, he's trying to escape and still do some damage somehow, finishing off the rangers here. I gang up with Bannock with his fireball, the stone priest with his alchemist curse, and Hernia Etta with her crossbow, and down goes the Mac Rock, so that's good. Meanwhile, my rangers are finished off, and that is essentially the game. So the ogres capture my central sector, so that's 2 points to them. I capture the ogres central sector, that's 2 points to me. Plus I've got this one, which is another point, so that's 3 points to me. And this region down here is contested, I think it was, by both those units. So no one has that. So 3-2 to me, so narrow victory to the dwarves, but a victory nonetheless. So another good performance by the dwarves, despite charging headlong into a bunch of ogres. It was a very aggressive attack here, with the dwarves sending all the close combat units against the enemy shooting, and my own shooting was kind of wasted really, given it was going against such hard targets, but it just was the way it worked out really. So pretty close, especially considering, you know, Richard was only playing his 4th game here, I think. But you know, he was obviously really getting the hang of things pretty quickly, so that's good to see. So last game of the tournament, and at this stage I had 3 wins, 1 draw, and Gordon had 4 wins. So whoever won this game would win the tournament. And Gordon had chosen League of Rhordia, which is an army which is an alliance of men and halflings, basically. And as you can see, this had a big block of horde of crossbow, a horde of halfling knights, 2 mounted scout units armed with black powder weapons, the honor guards, large cavalry, 3 volley guns, a battle shrine, a wizard, and a couple of heroes, one on a large beast thing and another on a winged arrowlaz, which is like a big winged horse here. I think it's supposed to be a dog, but anyway, that's the army, and as you can see, it's got a lot of shooting, though it's mostly hitting on 5s or 6s. Though it is mostly piercing, being black powder weapons though. So yeah, that's real strength, and a lot of combat power too in all these units. And just to touch on this one, Gordon said he wanted to take this army because he's thinking it might be one of those that they might not be in the next edition, perhaps, depending how things go. And the reason Gordon's thinking that is King's War has an evolving story, and the alliance between the men and halflings in the League of Rhordia broke, as detailed in this novel here. And the halflings kind of went their own way because many of the human kingdoms in the alliance got a bit racist towards the halflings, and the halflings weren't going to put up with that. And also, Mantic released a really nice halfling range. That's the halfling mega army there. So you'll still be able to use your Rhordian armies as an alliance of humans and halflings at the very least, but it may not exist in its current form as a separate list like this. But anyway, who knows? They do also reconcile a bit, so maybe the Rhordians will stay. Okay, enough of that. On with the game. So this was raise scenario. So there's a bunch of tokens. There's 1, 2, 3, and I think I'm sitting on some of the others. 1, 2, 3, and 1 right in the center. So you get points for capturing those on your opponent's half of the table. They're worth 1 each, and you remove them when you capture them by having more unit strength within 3 inches of them than the opponent at the end of your turn. And the middle one stays until the end of the game and is worth 2 points. So over here I have Ranger Troop, 2 Spear Levy, Shield Breaker, and Bannock. And in the middle, a whole bunch of Rangers with Hernietta and Stone Priest. And over here the rest of the force, including the Dwarf Lord. And so my thoughts here, here's the enemy force. So cavalry and cavalry on both flanks, and in the center this big block of shooting. So crossbows, volley guns, and the battle shrine and wizard. So that is an awful lot of shots packed into that little space. So most people wouldn't want to go near that, but my thought is they're in the open. So okay, all these rangers here are in cover, so they'll need 6s to hit me, and they'll halve their dice if my Stone Priest casts his Veil of Shadows, whereas I'll be hitting them on 4s and winning them on 4s or 3s. So I'm thinking actually that's a shooting duel due to the cover and the spell my Stone Priest has that these guys can win, especially if I get first turn. So I decided to actually do that. And meanwhile on the flanks, well, yeah, not confident against all that cavalry, but actually this is a good time for the Spear Levy to leap into action and save the day. So let's see what happens. First turn, and the Rhodians win the first turn, and the cavalry comes forward, it shoots and wavers these Spear Levy, and also the spear levy with those cavalry, and all the shooting knocks out my ranger troop who are routed. Okay, so my turn in response. These shoot back together with Bannock and Waver and do a fair bit of damage to these mounted scouts. This shooting knocks off one of the volley guns and damages another one. And unfortunately, and here's where the plan starts to fall apart a little bit, the Stone Priest decides he's not going to cast his Veil of Shadows spell. So he rolls 3 dice, needs 4 on any of them to cast the spell, but fails to do so. So no -1 on the shooting, so that's not great. So just look here at the left flank, and look here at the right flank. You'll notice I've got these shield breakers back here, who are kind of wondering, are they going to go running up here and come in, or are they going to back up? And I decide to turn and race down this way. So, next turn. The Rhordians, what do they do? Well, because they were wavered, the cavalry can't do much. But the hero on the winged arrowlads flies over to here, which is quite an annoying position, threatening my rangers. All this shooting wavers the next cross ranger regiment. Over here, my one of the spear levy troop is killed, routed by the shooting, and these move up to charge range. So what I do in return is the spear levy races up to kind of pin these scouts in the middle here. I think I really absolutely have to deal with this winged hero, otherwise it'll get behind me and cause all sorts of problems. So after a bit of umming and ahhing, the elite rangers turn to phase hits, the Stone Priest behind them, and Huni, Yeta, they all shoot and do some damage, but not enough to kill or waver it this turn. These wavered crossbows can't do anything. So I mean, this isn't great, because now all these rangers, the idea was to win a shooting duel, but now they're stuck in a shooting duel, or stuck shooting at this thing, or getting peppered by arrows and volley guns and lightning from over there. So that's not wonderful. And over here, the spear levy, it races up to just kind of get to a position where these halfling knights won't be able to fit past the side there. They'll have to actually charge it, as well those light cavalry. Well, the light cavalry could charge them, I guess, which is what they shall do. Okay, so here's the next turn, and that's exactly what happens. So these halfling knights charge into the spear levy, and they do take them out, which is not surprising given how many of them are. They also have the British strength, the halfling knights. And actually it looks as though these scouts didn't have the move to charge into them, but anyway, they've come forward, I think, to protect the flank of the halfling knights. Mistake I made here is they went a bit far, so that these shield breakers coming through weren't actually in range to countercharge or to charge the knights if the spear levy died. But oops, bit of a mistake. So this is the end of the Rhordian turn, and so in the middle I lost my next unit of rangers due to all this shooting. Spear levy are taken out. Over here, the other spear levy are taken out by the scouts. And I think I've just done my shooting with Bannock here and taken out the scout unit. And yeah, so charge in there, damage the scouts, don't kill them yet. The Lord charges in to try and hold off this big horde of halfling knights heroically and buy some time. And in the centre, so that all the scouts and the Stone Priest turn around and blast everything into this damn hero, doing 9 damage and wavering him, thank goodness. But still, while this is happening, they're not shooting across the border course, so this is not great. So here is the end of the halfling's turn next turn. So they've damaged the Lord, but he's holding. Damaged their shield breakers, but they're holding. The shield breakers are charged into this next knight unit and damaged them as had Bannock, but then the Honor Guard fought back and routed the shield breakers. Also lost the unit of spear levy there. These are getting peppered by all the shooting still, but finally they shoot back and finally take out this annoying hero. And the game continues. So the Honor Guard are taken down by shooting here. These archers have raced forward and they claim one of my objectives. And in fact they got one of the other objectives on the other flank. So that's two points that the Rhordians have scored. My rangers and the Stone Priest are just holding on in here. As it approaches the end of the game, they've taken 9 damage from all the shooting now, really taking a beating. And they really need to live to contest this middle objective. So, over here, what ends up happening over here? Well, this is a nice little sequence. So, the shield breakers charge into these 2 units. And the Dwarf Lord Eric there, he's fighting bravely against this entire horde. So we knock over the scouts and waver this hero, and boom, right through them. So Eric held on, he took 8 damage from the Halfling Knights, but was saved just in time by a flank charge. And these shield breakers rush forward and grab these 2 objectives. So that's 2 points each. But I lose my rangers, managed to take out those bowmen. The shrine has captured the central objective, so, and I'm not able to kill it in time, so it is a win to the Rhordians, and well done to Gordon, who just closed it out in the end there. So the win was 4 points to Rhordia and 2 points to the Free Dwarves. If I'd managed to take out that War Shrine, and I had done a fair bit of damage to it, then it still would have been a draw the way it ended up, which would have meant that I would have had 2 draws and 3 wins, and Gordon would have had 4 wins and a draw, and so he would still have won. So I really needed a win to win the tournament. But that's okay, not a bad outing for the Free Dwarves all up, and really enjoyed this last game. I think it was my favourite of the lot, despite the loss. So, and a great tournament overall. And here we are, second place for the Free Dwarves in this tournament. And Mantic very kindly gave us a whole bunch of gift vouchers for this tournament, and you'll see I've just blacked out the code there so someone doesn't see this and use it themselves. And overall, I mean, obviously this is not the super competitive environment you might get it. So the Masters tournaments overseas in Europe or America, but still pretty happy with how the Free Dwarves did here, and all the units really, they're all useful, they all had a place, and that's one of the things I really like about Kings of War. There's not, just complete rubbish units that I've encountered anyway. They all have some sort of role and use and utility. And a lot of character. It was fun to be able to rush my dwarfs forward in this unexpected way, leap out of forests and so on, and fight from them. So it's a fun army to use, and I'm tempted to use it again actually. So, all right. Lastly, I'll just mention coming up in a couple of months, actually less than 2 months now, we've got No Surrender, 18th of September 2022. I'll stick the player pack in the description. So same sort of setup. I am the TO for this one, so I will not be playing except to make up numbers if necessary. But I also won't be eligible for any of the prizes and so on for that one. So I'd love to see you there. We had 3 new players in this tournament. Just jumping in, playing pretty much the first games, and we've had that in each tournament, I think, so far. So if you definitely don't hold back. If you're keen to give it a go, just jump in and start playing some games. All right, thank you very much.